Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Music Survival Guide. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Phil. Say hi, Phil.
Hello.
And today we're going to be discussing the ins and outs of management. Is it worth it? Is it something you should be looking into? But we'll delve more into detail about that. Firstly, Phil, how are you?
I'm still alive. I can't argue with that, can you? You can't ask for much more than that. I've not died yet.
That's fair enough. It's been a while since we've actually podcasted together, isn't it?
It has. Although, if internet trickery prevails, it's just been a whole week since the last episode. No one needs to know. I mean, I think we have made the mistake in our first 4 or so episodes of saying how hot it is, and really showing that it's not when we put it out at all. But hey ho.
Yeah, it's fair to say the weather's trailed off.
Yeah, a little bit, but there we are. We're British, we can't help talking about the weather.
So what have you been up to since we last recorded then?
Well, I have been working with a great band. I was going to say from the Valleys, but I'm not going to do that because that would be horrendously racist. From Wales. A band called Bad Earth. So I've been working with them, which has been really great. And I've also been watching quite a lot of Blackadder in my spare time. Showing my wife because she's never seen it, would you believe?
That's insane. I swear that's like
insane.
Just part of being British is you just grow up watching that.
I know. I'm educating her.
Fair enough.
What have you been doing, Jay?
So I've just come back from producing a really cool Liverpool band called Urban Architects. I hope you don't mind me giving them a shout out.
Cheeky plug.
We went to Chapel Studios in Lincolnshire, which is an amazing space. Slightly biased because that's where I got my start, where I did my studio internship many moons ago. So yeah, it was just really fun. It was 4 days. Was it 5 days? I'm not sure. But all tracked live.
Oh,
and
I like that method.
First mixes are done. And I'm just really, really excited for everyone to hear it. So hopefully that should be out start of next year-ish. By that year being 2020.
Yeah, if you listen to this in the future, it may already be out.
At some point, yeah. It's beyond my control now. I've done my bits.
Fair. Are they from hashtag Liverpool?
They are from hashtag Liverpool. That's a good callback. Which would be very confusing for anyone who hasn't heard the previous episodes. But
let's not worry about that.
Yeah, go back and listen to them if you want to know the in-joke.
There's not much to get. Anyway, this week, music management, yay or nay?
Cool. So I think a great place to start with music management is, or band or artist management. The difficult thing is trying to really hone in on what music management is. A lot of people say they're getting signed. And I always think, are they getting signed to music management? Are they getting signed to label management? Is it like a management company? Is it a manager? There's so many.
Is it a promoter?
Yeah, a promoter. There's so many different types that So we just kind of want to lift the shroud. That's an appropriate term, isn't it? Lift the shroud.
Pull back the curtain.
Yeah. Just kind of just reveal some of the mystery and kind of hopefully point you in the right way.
Pull up the skirt of secrets and unveil the truth.
Yeah, just bust some myths is the best way to put it.
Joe, say you're an up and coming popular beat combo from hashtag Liverpool, not at all inspired by the Beatles, and you're thinking, how do I get ahead? How do I get ahead in my career? I've got some gigs under my belt, maybe got an EP or two. Maybe I should get a manager. Now, what would that manager actually do for you? What would you want that manager to do?
That's a really good point. There's so much to consider. Because it really depends on what kind of band you are, what situation you're in, and what you really require. Do you need someone who's going to do admin for you and kind of answer emails, or are you looking for someone who's going to open doors and give you new opportunities? As many different categories there are, there's also as many different types of managers and management deals. So it's really, really important that before you even consider management, you sit down with, whether, if you're by yourself or you're in a band and the subject of management comes up, and you say, what do you want that manager to do? Imagine it's your first meeting with your manager. What would you outline for the things that you want them to do?
There's so many things they could do.
Yeah.
I mean, in a like a traditional sense, your manager is organizing your time, is possibly helping you book studio time, is helping you with merchandise, is helping you with website and sort of news and keeping everything updated. But then there's perhaps the slight traditional, I'm going to use that phrase, distinction, is you also maybe have a tour manager who, this is like big bands, in like the heyday, I hate to call it that, who would help you with your tour, would help you book dates and hire in your PA gear if you need it, and help you get get an amp in a different country, whatever it may be. And it's really worth thinking about what you actually want, because I think a lot of people kind of have this very traditional view of the music industry. So they go, oh, well, if we're going to be a proper band, we've got to have a manager. There's no other way around it. And ultimately, we've also got to have a tour manager. Now, I would humbly suggest that if you are, touring arenas, you may well need a manager and a tour manager to help you organise those things, because you might have other things on your mind. But if you are playing, I don't know, some local pubs, I'm not beating down on you if you are just playing local pubs, but maybe think, is management really what I need right now at this stage?
Yeah. I mean, if you are doing arenas without a manager, then fair play to you. That's quite the achievement. Okay, to cite an example, I was working with a band, and they will remain anonymous.
Can we give them a fantasy name?
Go on. What name would you like to give them?
Banana Split.
What? I actually think that was an act, wasn't it? The Banana Splits.
I don't know. It just sounds like a 90s sort of pop band.
Okay. Anonymous band. They were working on some tracks with me, and they said, oh, our manager X will really like to hear this. And I've had a lot of interaction with them before, so it felt weird that I've never, been in contact with a manager. That would kind of be the first port of call, especially in our industry of being mix engineers and producers. Most likely a lot of our contact will be with managers if they have got managers. And I said, oh, right, okay, I didn't know you were signed to a manager. And they went, oh, yeah. Turns out they were kind of paying this manager X amount of money to, inverted commas, manage them. And I turned around and I said, right, well, what's he actually doing for you? And
an awkward question.
Yeah. And it wasn't, I don't think that at any point they were in denial, but I think the penny dropped for them at that moment. They kind of like, oh, right, well, he's not actually done that or this, and he isn't doing that. And we've paid, X amount of money, and they've really got nothing back apart from being able to say, we've got a manager, here's his email.
We've made it as a band.
Yeah, which is a trap I think a lot of people fall into.
Oh, yes.
I think I run into it a lot. You see bands saying, oh, we've been approached by a manager. And it's some bloke down the pub who's had a few too many and says, oh, I can manage you. And a lot of the time, they're not really going to do anything. If anything, they're just going to do more damage than they are good.
I mean, here's the rub. That's a strange phrase. Here's the thing. If the year was 1976 and the only way to get your music heard by the masses was to get signed to, I don't know, Atlantic Records or whatever it may be, having a manager in 76 would be pretty essential if you want to get signed, if you want to get your music heard, because managers tend to, good managers, have contacts and know people in the industry and know who to talk to and know where to promote you, or maybe where you should, where you should gig and that kind of thing. And they can help you get contacts and help you get ahead towards a record deal, which back then was actually quite necessary to get ahead. But nowadays, in this lovely internet social media age, there's actually a lot of things that you can do yourself. It's a whole nother conversation topic, but to make a career, you don't necessarily need to have a record deal anymore. And I would also suggest that you don't necessarily need a manager. Now, that depends on how busy you are and your schedules and how organised your band is. So there are some band members who are really driven and will, help you kind of help the band really kind of organise their time and organise what they want to do next. But there are some bands who, I'm not trying to stereotype or anything. I'm not naming any names at all. I'm being very diplomatic. Who are very creative and write some great songs, but aren't massively organised. And I would maybe suggest in this day and age, if you are a smaller band and you are not massively organised, maybe management might be worth considering.
Agreed with that.
I am just rambling.
No, I think they're all valid points. With the thing of not having a manager but also being disorganised, I think the best way around that is, well, what I've seen done successfully is just one band member being almost the pseudo manager in that situation. So kind of everything goes through them. They're almost like the treasurer, the secretary and everything else. Because I mean, personally, from my point of view, there's nothing worse than getting 5 different emails from 5 different band members saying, oh, can we do these things? Can we do that thing? And they're all conflicting. So I just usually say, appoint one band member and make sure like you have the conversation between you. Then that one band member comes to me, or we'll go to the studio, or we'll go to the promoter, or whatever, and just it's all organised centrally through one person. Although,
can I completely counter your point in one way?
100%, go for it.
With an example, as a band in Wales, in your neck of the woods,
What, the entire country?
The entirety of Wales. A band called Ravenbreed. I've probably mentioned them before. I don't know if I mentioned them by name. Anyway, they split their sort of organisation actually very cleverly, and it's very simple. You have one guy who does the bookings of the tour dates and organises getting there and, making sure they've not got a conflicting schedule, that kind of thing. You've got one person who does social media and responding to emails and Instagram and blah, blah, blah. And you've got one person who organises the studio time and that kind of thing, and I guess the more slightly creative endeavours. Not that social media doesn't have to be creative, but anyway. And it seems to work really well for them. So I would say it depends on the band. Sorry, I know that's completely countered exactly what you said.
Yeah, I mean, out of interest, how long have that band been going for, roughly?
Since about the beginning of 2018.
Oh, right, okay. That's, yeah. My only suggestion would be, if you're just starting out with that kind of stuff, I think it's easier to just kind of have one person who kind of at least has a general overview of everything.
Yes.
Otherwise, yeah, communication, especially amongst young bands, is not the best at the best of times.
No comment.
So I think just having one person to kind of act as an initial manager and the go-to person that can be called upon. Usually it's just the person who picks up the phone the most.
Yeah.
That tends to be, it's just best at replying at things.
The most organised person.
Yeah, the most organised person. So we were talking about, do you need the old school manager that you might have had in inverted commas, the good old days, which is a phrase I hate in itself. And there are a few things that I think you'd associate with managers of that era that still apply today, but it does require a good manager. So you kind of want to avoid, Terry down the pub who's had 3 Stella Artois and says he wants new Paul McCartney's gardener.
Terry might know what's going on.
To kind of say, oh well, I'll manage you. That's not really useful. But if you have someone who has genuine contacts and has seen the industry and can act as another safety net, can stop you from making mistakes that they've seen before, and can point you in the right direction, that's something really worthwhile. So I personally know a lot of the time that when it comes to bands booking supports and tours, there's an element of you have to have good social media profile, and your music obviously has to be good. There has to be a foundational level. But ultimately, I think a lot of it comes down to personal relationships and who knows who.
Yeah.
So if you do have a manager that can go, oh, well, I have a band that worked on this label or worked on tour with that band, I've got another band that can do that. I get work all the time through basically managers who might work with one band, that project goes really well, and then the same manager refers me to another band. So it's those type of contacts that, and I would never have naturally come across that band, and that band might never have come across me. So without those kind of relationships, then, a lot of things wouldn't have happened. So in that respect, I do think an old school manager is appropriate, but obviously they need to have the appropriate experience and contacts.
It's 100% a people and personality based industry is the music industry. I would say even more so than it used to be, because you're relying on a bit more on things like social media and meeting people at gigs and that kind of thing. And it relates to a point we have made in previous podcasts. Side note, can I use the word or are we exercising that word? Or are we just going to bleep it?
I might bleep it if it's funny.
Fair enough. So it relates to something we have discussed in previous podcasts, which is don't be a basically, if you as a band member are organised and you can successfully not be a around people, then you could probably manage your own band. Basically, that's kind of what it comes down to. It seems to be a lot of our advice is don't be a but it seems to apply so well and so widely.
Yeah, it really does. There's another element to having that, that dodgy manager is essentially a dodgy manager is the face of your band.
Yes.
They will be the first port of call that a lot of people will come across. So if you've got someone who doesn't represent your ethos, is unprofessional, starts arguments with people, that's what people will think of your band, regardless of whether it's you. If it's your manager that's doing it, then it will, it could get you blacklisted by producers, studios, tour managers, promoters, you name it. A bad manager can pretty much ruin any chances of your band being successful.
Bad manager is a bad time.
Yeah, it's the risk of having a bad manager is insane.
Oh yes. And here's just another piece of advice really that's come to mind, is if in your kind of local or wider music scene you have you know of a band who you sort of really look up to and you really respect, and you're like, they're going places and I want to be almost where they are, where they're at, then talk to them. I mean, it's a people-based industry. If you go, do you have management? That is a great start. If they go, oh well, yes, we're managed by X, whatever, whoever it may be, then great. Maybe that's someone to talk to. Maybe that's an opening.
Yeah, totally agree with that. There's a bit of advice I gave someone even today was I said, if you kind of are in negotiations with a manager, if they're good, then they won't mind them saying who they've managed in the past. The best reference you're going to get for that experience is reaching out to that band and kind of saying, hey, what are the good things? What maybe some of the not so good things? And they'll give you an honest opinion. They've got nothing to lose at that stage. And there's also an element of you can be slightly wary of a manager who's being a bit shifty about who else they've worked with in case it's a bad reference.
That's a red flag. Good old red flag.
Yeah, it's certainly something I've come across, even when it comes to people who in my world, when people want to record music and I say, okay, cool, if you've got demos or previous stuff I can listen to, and they basically try and work their way out of the question, and that always raises a red flag to me of like, ooh, I don't think you're particularly serious about this. So some advice that I always give to any band that comes to me and they say, hey Joe, we've been approached by this management deal or this management company, is I always say set targets and deliverables for whoever you're going to work with. So you need to set terms, because you're forgetting, as well as them doing something for them and then being associated with your brand, you're also going to be associated with theirs. They're your employee to some extent. And if they were working any other kind of job, you wouldn't say, well, yeah, kind of do whatever you like and should be all right. You'd kind of say, right, well, in the case of a band, you say, okay, well, in a year, we want you to aim to get us on a tour, like a 5-date tour, and we want you to get us to work with X, Y, and Z. It depends on your situation, where you are in your career, and loads of the type of manager you've got. But ultimately, I think it's a really good idea to sit down and go, we want to achieve X, Y, Z by like the end of the contract that you sign.
The other thing I'd say is almost a word of caution, is be realistic with yourself. If you are doing sort of local pub gigs at the moment, that's great. You're building a following. Keep doing it. But don't seek a manager expecting them to get you on a tour with Iron Maiden or whoever it may be. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
The greatest manager in the world will probably struggle to get you on an arena tour if you're playing pubs.
Agreed.
If you haven't considered that, then be careful, I would honestly say, about management.
Yeah, I think it's relevant to your situation. So if you are a pub band, then maybe it's a case of, okay, well, I want you to get us like a supporting slot in a club venue for like a reasonably big band or something like that by the end of the year. It totally depends, and a good manager will discuss these ambitions with you. The nightmare manager that I keep on thinking of in my head is one that will approach you at a pub gig and say he can get you on an arena tour within a year. That should be setting off. If it sounds too good to be true, it most definitely is. So those are definitely some things to look out for.
The other thing to consider is it a good use of your money? So if you are being really serious about finding management and you have had a conversation with this person about realistic goals and expectations that you want from them, I would see if you can get like a trial period almost, where you can say, look, let's basically, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily put it this way. Let's see if you can do what let's see if you can do what you say you can do. So ultimately, if they say, I can do this, this, and this for you, whatever that may be, and they don't or they can't, then that might not be the best use of your money. That money might be better used, saving up for a studio session. It might be better used for promotion of yourself on social media, or wherever that may be. Or it might even be better used buying gear. Love, gear.
Yeah, although that's where gear acquisition syndrome starts to creep in.
Yeah, be careful about that.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting what you're saying there about setting targets, because I feel like we're singing from the same hymn sheet. It's all kind of about setting deliverables and kind of saying, can you deliver X, Y, Z? And a good manager will set realistic deliverables. So maybe I'm repeating myself with that, but
are we in fact talking about SMART goals, management speak?
Oh yeah.
Well,
that's one for another time.
I detest management speak, but let's not talk about that now.
Yeah, and during these conversations as well, it's really important to not be afraid to ask questions.
Yes.
There's a lot of bands I know that are kind of, they feel intimidated by the situation. You know, there might be a contract involved, or for a lot of people, this can be intimidating, and there might be people who are saying, oh, well, I've worked with XYZ, so you just kind of feel like, oh God, well, if I don't sign immediately, then the opportunity is going to go. That hardly ever will be the case. If you're confused about anything, even if you feel like it's the most stupid question on the planet, then you should feel perfectly fine to ask that question, and a good manager should explain it. It's like my mantra whenever I'm in the studio, whenever I'm mixing, when I'm working with an artist, is there's no such thing as a stupid question. I'd much rather they ask that question than chaos further down the line when it's been misinterpreted.
Yeah.
Which has happened. It happens all the time. So if I can see someone hesitating, or I can see a slight confusion on their face, I'll just say, whatever the question is, ask it. I can guarantee I've heard more stupid questions than the one you're about to. And I imagine a lot of managers will be the same.
Good ones will say that. So, to sum up this conversation, I'll let Joe say his piece in a minute, but I'd say think carefully about what you want from a manager, if it is realistic and achievable. Think carefully. This is a load of warnings, really. Think carefully about if you can do it yourself, and think carefully about whether it would be a good use of money. And if the answer to, I was going to say the answer to all three is yes, that's not quite right. If the answer to two of those is yes, that's kind of still not right. If the answer is go for a manager, then start looking. Wow, that was really long-winded summary.
It's perfectly fine. I'm going to try and summarize mine in a 3-step plan.
Oh.
So 1 is do your research. So if you do find a manager, or a manager comes to you, make sure you research the living daylights out of them. Ask for referrals. So again, I suppose that kind of comes a little bit under the umbrella of research, but kind of ask for, not necessarily about the same manager, but you can find other people who've had similar management experiences, ask them what went wrong, what went well, and that can all be taken into the negotiations. And finally, there is no such thing as a stupid question. Ask as many stupid questions as you possibly can, because once you've signed that contract, you've signed a contract. So make sure it's all out on the table and you fully understand the situation before you put your name on the dotted line.
Love a good stupid question.
Speaking of stupid questions, what's the name of our Facebook group?
Oh, quickly goes to check on Facebook. It is the Music Survival Guide. Hang on, the Music Survival Guide podcast. Hey, I know the name of our page.
Amazing.
Come and join the fun.
What will you find there, Phil?
Well, as of time of recording, very little. But we're going to have lots of conversations and discussions about each episode. It's a great place to meet people. It's a great place to just kind of discuss the music industry and what's happening in the 21st century music industry.
Amazing. Yeah, it's going to be the perfect place to potentially meet a manager.
Ooh.
How's that for a tie-in?
Big promises.
But that's why I use the word potentially. Anyway, as always, if you've got any questions that you feel me and Phil can answer, you can reach out to me, which is joe@nevisaudio.com, or you can reach out to Phil
at vortissoundstudios.com. Or if you want to contact us both, then there's the musicsurvivalguide@gmail.com email address, all very official sounding.
Yeah, you're prepared. Are you technically the manager of this podcast?
It depends if I'm being paid or not.
No. And on that note, thank you for listening.
We will see you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.